But this gentleman goes to the bank, and the bank tells him, you know what? I'm sorry, but you're dead. Dead as in what? Dead as in the system is dead? No, you're dead in the system.
Hi, everybody, and welcome to a new episode of Let's Keep It Real Now, where we talk about anything and everything related to real estate and our personal life. So I have a great guest today. But before you start, I'm sorry. Let me introduce myself. Well, you already know me, right? I am Danielle Bilumbu with DBK Real Estate. Here, how? Favorite lender?
Abu Jabi with AMP Lending. How y'all doing today?
Great. And then we have a special guest. So she's a lady with tons of experience regarding credit, and that's what we're going to focus on today. How are you, Miss Luisa? Deason?
I'm doing very well. Thank you so much for having me, because there is so much misinformation out there. There's a lot of ground to cover.
Tell us which company are you with right now?
I am with Freedom Path. And Freedom Path is a financial wellness as well as a credit restoration company. And because the FTC has changed a lot of the regulations and how people can do business in my world, there's been a lot of people that have been either criminally charged or they've been shut down, because the days of charging somebody per item or charging them a large amount to do repair and guarantee that it can take place and fix in 30 days or 60 days, those days are gone. Those companies that are doing that are doing something illegal, and they will not last.
Okay. So tell me, what's the difference between, we hear that a lot sometimes in ads and stuff, credit repair, credit restoration. What does that mean exactly?
Well, there's a big difference. Restoration literally means that what we're doing is we're not just going to take a client and start disputing the negative and derogatory items from all three credit bureaus and do it effectively without making sure that those items that have been derogatory, once removed or have been settled and the debt can be agreed upon, that they are permanently removed from the credit reports. It doesn't service anybody if you get a client and something disappears for 30 or 60 or maybe 90 days. And they get to the closing table in the morning that they're going to close, the title company pulls that credit, and those things that had disappeared have popped back up again. That client is not closing on that transaction that day.
Hold on. How come the things can disappear? What do they do to make it disappear?
There's a lot of tricks that a lot of people use that are illegal. And so you can shuffle things around, you can move them, you can hide things, but that is all illegal tactics. And that is exactly what the FTC has decided to come down on and really focus on, because so many people have so much misinformation and so many people are losing such large amounts of money paying the wrong people to help them. It doesn't benefit anybody. And the bigger thing is we provide the education attached to that. If I can identify what caused the behavior or what caused the issue, and I can correct it and teach that individual why and how I'm correcting it, chances are that customer is not going to turn around and have that same problem again, as long as they are doing business with us.
That's very interesting. I never.
It's a matter of, I'm going to teach you how to fish instead of giving you the fish. I want you to ensure that if you don't use me, but what you've learned and you get yourself into a problem down the road, that you will know exactly how to get yourself out of it.
So pretty much if the government got involved lately, it must have been going on a lot of fraud. Do you have some example?
Well, I can tell you that there are companies that will charge, like, let's sign you up and do a 2-for-1. Well, there's no such thing in personal credit as signing up a husband and wife or a boyfriend or a fiance or a couple and do a 2-for-1. That's not possible. It doesn't exist. They're like a fingerprint. Everybody's credit reports are different. No two people have the same issues on their credit reports. And so for that reason, you can't ever promise that you're going to remove something in 30 days. That's illegal. The second thing is, it depends on what company reported it, who or which credit bureau they reported that to. But at the end of the day, the 2-for-1 has no bearing. It's illegal. The problem is people don't realize that when you're building positive credit, it's what's attached to your social security number. So anything that has been attached or financed based on your social is what should be appearing on your credit report.
So be careful who you
So
give
if
you
you're
that
telling me
number
to give you a discount and do a husband-wife discount, it's 2 separate socials. There's no possible way I do that. So I'm very fair. And I usually sit down with the couple and I say, okay, who's in bigger peril? Who has the bigger problems? Who's the bigger earner? Whose name is actually going to go on the title?
Yeah.
And we work from there. If the other person has to wait 3 or 4 months before we get them enrolled, great. If they're both working, then it's a different animal.
Okay.
Does the same thing go for trade lines as well?
Well, when you're building trade lines, what happens, that's related to the credit, the business credit. But I will tell you something. Nobody should ever co-sign for anybody and or attach them or add them to a credit card or any such thing. You're robbing that individual from being able to create their own line of credit positively and effectively. You don't want to sign your son and add someone who's young to your credit card and they go off to college and then they ruin or spend like crazy on that credit card. And then when they stop paying for that bill that they're assigned to, it ruins your credit as well. I've seen it so often. It happens all the time. In fact, I have a customer that co-signed for somebody who was a buddy of his several years ago. I think they purchased a vehicle. And the problem was that he didn't realize that friend years later, without any communication amongst both of them, has died.
Oh.
So he's looking for credit restoration services. He aligns himself with us, and I suggest to go to the bank and try to get credit established again. And the best way to do that is to go down and see if you can get a secure bank card. You're putting your own money down as collateral for your own credit card. But if you learn how to use it, some of these credit cards can really turn into something very, very effective. But this gentleman goes to the bank, and the bank tells him, you know what, I'm sorry, but you're dead. Dead as in what? Dead as in the system is dead? No, you're dead in the system. In the state of Texas, if you co-sign for somebody and somebody that you co-sign for dies, it's likely that you will be reported as deceased as well.
Oh, wow.
He didn't know that. So now he has to go down to the Social Security Administration and fix that problem, or he won't have a retirement.
Oh my God.
Wow.
And he's been working this entire time and nobody come and knock on your door and say, hey.
Nobody teaches people credit. How do you build it? What's the first thing college students are hit with when they're at their first semester at college?
Student aid.
All these credit card companies, and they don't realize that they're great. But it might be 0% interest the first 3 months, and then it balloons out to 37%.
That actually happened to me when I was in college as well. I mean, as a freshman, attending Sam Houston State, we hit what we call the yard. That's where everybody goes to mingle. And you had these credit card companies that were set up, and they would give out free T-shirts. And you would go out and sign up just to get the free T-shirts and then be locked into a credit card.
Well, and that's the worst way to start building credit.
Why college allowed those credit companies to be there?
I don't know that there's a way to tell them not to. But the one that's always going to win in this end is the credit card company. You can't possibly. I do credit classes, Danielle, and I show people the difference of having great credit and having bad credit. Let me paint a picture. Mm-hmm. So let's say you're trying to buy a house that's worth $375,000, but your credit is at 630.
Yes.
And mine's at 720. Over that 30-year compound interest rate, you're going to get a better rate. I'm going to get a better rate because I'm at a higher score than you are.
Yeah.
Same house, same terms, 30 years. But because you're at 620 and I'm at 720, or 630 and I'm at 720, you will pay almost $157,000 more in compound interest over that 30-year loan than I will. So when somebody tells me it's too expensive for me to restore my credit, I tell them, you can't afford not to. Let's put this into perspective.
That's very true.
It's true.
You cannot afford not to.
And then I've seen it. I'm not from here. So credit and all that is kind of a foreign term because in Europe, we work with security of employment. They want you to work for a long time. No behind payment. When you buy a house, it's 20% down. America is the El Dorado. Everything is like 3%, 0% down. It doesn't really exist.
America is the only country in the world that rotates around credit. So imagine the amount of foreign nationals coming in here. And I cater to the foreign national because we can also help you build credit when you get here. The worst thing I can tell you is don't listen to your aunt's, cousin's, neighbor's, brother's friend because they're not the professional in the industry. And that's how people get in trouble.
Yeah, so pretty much, let's look at this. So what you don't do, let's just go back to that part. You don't co-sign with somebody, right?
Never.
Even your kids for college?
Never.
Really?
The reason is you can start them at 18 and you can get them a secure bank card or a small credit card and they can start building on that. Okay. The fact is, if you do not educate them at a young age about budgeting first, they're never going to live within the parameters of a budget.
True.
I can't train and teach somebody who continues to have late payments reported on their credit reports. I can always tell you that's always a budgeting issue. You're running out of money at the end of the month.
So you need to cut your expense or make more money.
Live within your means.
Yeah, but a lot of people, that's America.
Yeah.
How do you live below your means in America?
You know, the thing is that a lot of people
That's
don't
the
realize
question.
it's harder to remove a late payment from your credit reports. It's almost impossible. It's doable, but it takes months, if not maybe a year or longer. The problem is people don't realize that is harder to remove than a bankruptcy, than any kind of bankruptcy. That's been discharged, and it's been 2 years from the discharge date from the courts relieving that particular item.
So when you have a late payment, how long in average it take for that
I've
to
seen
go
it come
away?
off in 18 months, and I've seen them come off in almost 4 years. Depends on how many you have, and it drags your credit score down about 110 points.
Whoa.
It's the biggest hit you'll take besides a bankruptcy. And it's
Whoa.
preventable.
Yeah.
It's preventable.
It is preventable. It's just like is like some people calling you, hey, could you help me pay my electricity bills? Every month you have the electricity bill.
Yeah.
That's not a surprise. You should budget and plan a little bit better to make sure you make that payment.
I used to sell electricity a lot years and years and years ago. And I think, starting out, if you're a young person, you're in a new house, or you're starting out and you're in an apartment, you want to get, to do that where they can budget and you pay the same amount every month is doable when you first start out, but that's not going to save you money in the end. I tell people all the time, if you don't know what your credit score is or what's on your credit reports, you are not in touch with what needs to happen. Your credit scores are a vital sign to your livelihood. Do you realize that if you try to get life insurance, they look at your credit scores and they attach the premium to that life insurance based on your...
Since when?
Because it's a risk. You're a high risk to them.
Oh, wow. I didn't know.
It's not just about the health.
I didn't know insurance.
It's
people
about the
was checking
risk.
credit
It
score
affects
now.
your car insurance. It
Homeowners
affects your
insurance,
electricity
too.
rates. Have you ever had to put a deposit down because you don't have enough credit? They tell you,
Yeah, when I
would you
came
please?
to America, I used to
Yes,
put deposit for
you're
everything.
a risk. Everything in this country is based on risk.
But it's crazy because I was like, I didn't have no credit. It's not like I'm a bad person. I just come here and pay everything by
But
cash.
the other
so they
option
were
you
asking
had-
me for deposit for everything.
Well, and that's how you build. That's how you start.
So is there a situation where somebody can build credit on their own versus coming to see you? And then what situations are there where they do have to come see you?
I think any situation they need to come see her.
I
think so.
don't charge anything for consultations, whether it's on a Zoom, a phone call, or an email. I just don't. I just believe that if you have a question, you need to be guided in the right direction. But if I'm talking to, depends on the youth. It depends on the age group that we're talking about. But normally, if I'm dealing with somebody very young that has never had a credit card, I don't tell the parents, add them to your credit cards. That's a no-no.
Oh, you don't do that for your kids?
No, you
I
do
was
not.
watching something.
I'll
and
tell
they
you
say
why you
I
don't.
should add my kids and
No.
so they can
They're
build their
writing
credit.
on your credit, and the moment you remove them, it affects yours.
Oh,
So what you want to do
I didn't know.
is you want to have them start out with a small credit card. I started out with my kids.
So hold on.
He got a Chevron
Luisa,
card
you're
or he
going
got a
way too fast.
secure bank card.
This is too fast for my brain. This is woo, I need to make sure I understand
I just
it.
warped it. It just blew the wind out of her sails.
This is like woo. Okay, so I do have 4 babies, right? I want to make sure by the time they're 18, they have good, strong credit. I should not add them to my credit card
No, you should not.
because if I remove them one day from my credit card, it's going to affect me.
Well, and if you add them and then you allow them to keep that card and they go nuts on it, the one that it affects is you.
Yeah. But of course, I'm never going to give them.
Well,
I'm just doing it to
I
help
think
them.
every parent starts out with that intention, but I think to do a good service to them is when they start to be at the age where they can open up a bank account, start teaching them about responsibility about the bank account.
Inside a secure.
And then when they turn 18, I believe they're eligible to get a secure bank card.
Okay.
And get them
what I
a
did
secure
for my
bank
son.
card. I'll tell you what are the worst credit cards to get. When somebody says, well, I went out and got a Victoria's Secret card or I got a Lowe's card. Those are not
TJ
really
Maxx.
the important cards.
We're not supposed to see brain.
Because when you sign up for those, they might be at 0 interest for the first 3 months, but then they balloon out to like 37%. That's not the card you want. You want to start out with something like a secure bank card from your credit union. We're going to start offering that here shortly. But the advantage is they're building on their own reputation and their own history of how they pay their bills. I tell my son, if I gave you $100 yesterday and you are now asking me for 20 more, you didn't budget correctly because that was the budget you had for the next 2 weeks. Well, I know, but I was in a place and I felt bad. My friends were buying. I don't care what your friends are buying. I'm not your friends. I'm not your friend's mother. I'm your mother, and I'm going to teach you. If anything you're going to learn in life is about credit and how to manage it and how to maintain it so that you don't ever get yourself in a problem.
So typically with a credit card, as far as the balance, the minimum balance to get the highest credit score, typically I tell my clients somewhere like, don't go over 10% max. Is that a rule of thumb?
Or 30%.
That 10% might be a little unrealistic. Most people carry
30%?
about 20 or 30%. But I'll tell you what, we live in an environment where everybody lives outside their means. Why?
Yes.
Because you can carry the credit. This is just the way this country operates. So I tell people, when you're working with me and we have to dispute negative and derogatory items off your credit reports, I do not want you to go out and get a new card. I do not want you to go out and buy a new car. I don't want you to go out and buy anything.
Just
Number
wait.
one, it skews your debt to income ratio, which affects the loan. But the second thing is, if you have credit cards, don't close anything. You will plummet your score overnight 200 points if you shut something down. What the creditors want to look like, what the lender wants to look at, is the history of how that item has been paid. Are you a high risk? Are you filled with late payments? That's a high risk. You're a high risk. So no wonder they're going to have a higher interest rate for you. They don't have the surety to make sure that you're going to pay the entire loan. So what I tell people is, if you're going to carry a credit card, don't go out and buy stupid things. Go out and, like, if you're going to go out and get a secure bank card, fill your gas tank up with gas on that credit card. Don't go out and buy $8 cup of coffee at Starbucks. Okay, that doesn't help you.
Yeah.
Pay or shift the way you bill something. The purpose of those credit cards isn't to add to your budget. It's to shift the way you're paying something in a different way. If you pay your phone bill and it's an auto draft out of your account, your bank account, shift it onto that credit card to make sure that you're now building positive credit history. You're proving to the creditors that you can, in fact, be responsible with your bills. And the fact that you're doing something on a regular basis is the key. So people will tell me this and they'll go, I wish I'd have talked to you before I signed up, because I paid off all my debt and I closed all my credit cards. And I said, you just went from a 700 to a 400.
Yeah.
And they're like, what? And I'm like, you just shut all the history that you've had in existence. Veterans do this all the time. They get back from fighting overseas. They come back and they're like, well, I didn't pay my bills, but when I got back, I paid everything off and then I closed them. And I thought, you just shot yourself in the foot without pulling out the gun out of the holster. Don't do it. There's things you should not do. Do not buy appliances. Do not buy things at cons. Do not buy things that, I could tell you, there's certain providers that provide you internet or TV or cable or things like that, and I'm not going to say them by name because it's just notorious. They'll report you late the first day it's late, and that's not lawful. It has to be reported after 31 official days of it being late. And those are the hardest things to remove.
Yeah. I guess what I learned personally here is just to use credit for investment. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Don't use it for stuff that if you can pay the water, it will be cash, pay with cash.
Well, we don't want everybody paying cash. That's the other flip side I want to talk about.
Oh, okay.
So let's go into the person, and trust me when I tell you, I've done this for 10 years. Bad credit and credit challenges doesn't target a specific economic level of individual in this country. It hits everybody. I have doctors and lawyers, and I have people that are very, very, very wealthy that pay cash for everything, and their credit invisible because you're not continuing the reporting history that needs to happen in a positive manner.
Exactly.
So when that gentleman I talked about earlier who had great success and company car and company credit card and that is taken or closed, I send him to the bank and say he's the one that co-signed for somebody. It's like, if you have to restore your credit, we can help you with that. It's going to take time. That's the other misconception. People think it's a quick fix. No, that stuff has been on your reports for several years. But what you need to understand, if you're paying cash for everything, that's even worse because you're not having that continued, let's report it onto 2 of the 3 or 3 of the 3 or 1 of the 3 credit reports, credit bureau reports positively.
And how about the 7-year term that they always state?
I love this question.
Once your credit's been on your credit report for 7 years, it falls off. Is that accurate?
true?
That's the biggest myth that exists.
If they resell it, I bet you won't.
Well, let me
away.
just say this, and this is a trick that everybody should know. Nothing falls off on its own. It has to be disputed and legally removed. Remember, the credit bureaus are private companies for profit. They get paid on every item that's attached to your credit. Reported on them, okay?
I didn't know. I thought they were
Their
just
responsibility is not to verify if that item that is being reported by that company, whether it's the credit card or a bank or a mortgage or car, it doesn't matter. the credit bureau, I don't even know why they use the word bureau behind it, but credit bureaus are private companies for profit. They get paid and make money off of the stuff that's reported. So it's not in their best interest to say, okay, I'm going to check and see that what's being reported is 100% accurate. They could care less. And the other thing is, people always ask me, why do I have 3 different scores and why are they always different?
Yeah.
I'll answer that. The credit bureaus are in cahoots with one another. They do not communicate and share information. They're competitors to one another. So what happens is the company that you might have purchased a car from may only report your monthly payment if it's done correctly to Experian and Equifax, but never to TransUnion. And then you might have a company that only reports to TransUnion, or you might have a company that reports to all 3. That's why your scores are different, because it depends on who you're doing business with, who you finance something with, and who they report it to.
Okay.
The other thing is, it's not until you put these credit bureaus into a legal dispute, and I mean legal as in I'm going to fight this negative and derogatory item off your credit reports based on the law that protects you as the consumer. And that law is called the Fair Credit Reporting Act of 1971. That law was created to keep these bureaus in line. So the moment that they get that legal dispute, we do everything by mail. The legal dispute requires that the customer print their own letters. We help them select them through our system. We walk them through it. They become very well versed in what they need to pick. And then when they mail out the letters after they've signed it and included a copy of their social and a copy of their driver's license for address verification, then what happens is the following. Once that credit bureau receives that letter of dispute, they legally now, the clock starts ticking, they have 30 days to verify the validity of what's on that report. They then have to go out to the entity that reported that and verify it. If it's not 100% accurate, they have to legally remove it and notify you in 15 days by mailing you back credit reports. So when I tell people it's like scolding a child, you're not going to go right to spanking the first time. You're going to go with, let me pull you aside, let me tell you what I think made mommy mad.
Exactly.
Then the next time it might be a timeout before you ground them indefinitely. But the thing is, you don't start out with the harshest thing. So they might blow us off the first, second, and third dispute, which takes almost a cycle of 50 to 55 days apiece. So when somebody calls me and says, I have a late payment that I have to get off, I'm closing in 32 days, I'm like, I'm not touching you. Let's go back and see if we can't beg and grovel and plead to the company that reported it late, but you're not closing. And I'm not going to put you in an active dispute because then you're not closing for sure. I'm just that honest. But what we do is we dispute things under the law, because under the law, we've been known to have somebody go to court. And if that credit bureau doesn't disclose the validity of that item, what happens is then they don't just have to disclose that item. They have to disclose every item like that on record. You think they want to open up all of their books? No. So the difference is who you go to matters first.
Yeah, so
and
the person needs
we
to
like
have,
to educate our consumer, because if I give you the tools to understand what's right from wrong and you learn something, then the chances of you not coming back to me as a client are probably over 90%. I don't want repeat customers. I want your referrals, but I don't want you to be a repeat customer. If you come back to me as a repeat customer, and in my previous life I never had a repeat customer, I don't want you back. Let me just shed some light. Out of 98,000 agents in a previous company I worked in for a long, long time, I was number 1 in customer acquisition and customer service in all of Texas, number 4 in the entire U.S.
Look at you.
You think
Good
I know my
job.
stuff? I know my stuff.
Yes, I know, because I've
definitely
been working
tell.
with you for
And
a
I have
minute.
a real passion for it. It makes me so mad when somebody says, I've tried 3 or 4 companies. Or they'll say, oh my gosh, I have to mail my own letters out. Well, if you tried 4 other companies and they mailed them for you, what did you learn? And then why are you with me? Because when you're with me, I'm going to show you how to mail them, and I'm going to tell you why you need to know what your credit reports look like, so that you, once we start correcting and restoring to the best. I mean, I've seen people's scores, and I can't ever give a guarantee, but I mean, I remember having a lady who had been renting for 25 years, renting. The first time, she was 65 when she bought her first house. You'd think her husband and her weren't the most thankful people on the planet with what we had done to their credit reports. Their scores went up over 100 points in about 14 months. You just have to do the right thing, but you have to be aligned with the right company.
But pretty much in any case, no matter where your credits are, credit, no credit, you have something, you don't have something, you're young, you're old, you can always do something about
Well,
it.
and there's also another feature that can help boost the credit. So if you're renting, you can go back to that program where you can back report onto all 3 credit bureaus. Rent you've paid on time. So what happens is if you have just 3 months of credit, good renting history, and you've paid on time, if the landlord in that apartment complex, or if you have a company that is taking your payment and you're renting or leasing a home, it doesn't really work for the person whose best friend is loaning them out that, and they're giving them a deal and letting them live in that house and pay rent. That person's probably not going to have the documentation needed to be able to report to the 3 credit bureaus. But I've seen scores jump up anywhere from 8 to 80 points in 30 days with this program. And if you're trying to buy and you're trying to boost your credit any way, shape, or form, these are incredible programs and services that we offer in conjunction with the credit restoration, because they all go hand in hand.
Does that same thing go for like the light bills? Because like when I pull credit, I see clients that have light bills that are reporting on the credit report as well.
Yes, if you've had to put down a social and paid a deposit, chances are is you're also having that report on. Where it gets very sticky is when somebody says, okay, well, I got mad, I returned my DirecTV box and they said that I hadn't canceled correctly. That happens all the time. And I'll say, okay, so they keep charging you, now they've sold it to collections. The problem is, if it hasn't been sold to collections, you really have to fess up and get payment and a receipt. But if that is if any kind of debt with the original company sells the debt to a third party, like let's say you go out to Lowe's and you're building a deck in your backyard and all of a sudden you get injured and for whatever reason you can't pay that bill, and then something happens and a couple of months later they get fed up with you and they said, we're not going to chase them, we're going to write it off as a loss, we're going to sell that debt to a collections agency. That company or Lowe's loses the ability to ever come back and charge you a dime for that once it's sold. They can't. It's unlawful. The company that bought the debt, if they're a third party, you don't have a signed agreement with them. You don't have a document that has your original signature on it. If they did, it was transferred over from company 1 to company 2, and that's illegal. Second thing is they probably paid 20 or 30 cents on the dollar for the debt. So when they tell you we're going to charge you what you owed Lowe's, you're going to say go jump in a lake. I'm not paying you that. I know exactly what you paid for the debt. Why don't we settle this so I can permanently remove this? If, in fact, it was your item. Most people go, well, it's collections. It's not mine. Legally, it's not yours, but if you want to permanently remove that item off of your reports, you will have to settle the debt and get a receipt. If you ask them to please remove it from the credit bureau, they may not, but it doesn't matter. Get that receipt. Because the next time they try to continue to report something that's no longer 100% accurate, they have to legally remove it.
So what do you do for medical bills? It's the same thing, right? The
medical bills are different.
Okay.
Medical bills are unique because a lot of the information that can be transferred to a collections agency is not allowed to because of the HIPAA protections awarded to that individual. Mm-hmm. So most often than not, they stay a little bit longer in their own billing department. But once sold, it's negotiable debt.
Okay.
But I mean, if you think about it, let's think of this logically. If you really did owe the debt and it's you, and it's not some fraudulent charge, somebody else stole your identity and did something, then, I mean, come on, let's step it up to the plate and let's just admit that although we can try and negotiate the debt, the ding is yours. It belongs to you. The debt was originally yours. Let's not try to, weasel out of it because so-and-so told you that you can weasel out of it. If you really... Now, repair companies obviously are not as effective as we are because we don't give up. But they don't teach clients. They do the work for them. And so I'm not saying everybody out there is bad, but you better make darn sure that the person you're sending your clients to is following the FTC new regulations, which we do, and we do it to a T.
Okay.
Because otherwise, they're robbing your clients of money. They're robbing your clients of an opportunity to really do something and really change the trajectory of their buying power. Mm-hmm. And in our book, knowledge is power. I want to give you as much information and education through the videos we have, through the Q&As that we have in our portal, through everything that we have and everything I teach you, because I do not want you to be abused or taken advantage of again, ever.
Yeah.
Wow.
Good for you.
Well, we learned a whole lot. I learned a lot today. So I just want to thank you, Luisa, for being here and teaching us about credit. And you should come back and teach her some more. Yeah, hopefully you guys learn a lot. And then how can people get hold of you?
The best way is just call me on my cell phone. It's 832-244-2688. 2488. And you can find me on Facebook. A lot of people reach me out on Facebook. It's Luisa Deason. It's Luisa Deason. D like David, EASON. And it's just, I've got an open to the public Facebook page. You know, I do a lot of education. I do a lot of credit tips on my Facebook page.
That's awesome. So everybody can follow and learn.
They can
more.
reach you, and you can refer them to me.
Exactly.
Most
Exactly.
definitely.
So anybody who's out there, if you have any credit challenge, and it doesn't matter if the person's in Texas or another place, or you
We're
just
licensed to operate in all 50 states.
Okay, so yeah, so anybody out there watching this video, if you need help with your credit, sit down, understand it, learn how to budget a little bit better. Make sure to reach out to Luisa. She's right here. She's fantastic. You just hear from her, from the source. We appreciate the time we hear with her. So make sure, guys, to comment below, ask us question. We can answer it, and then follow us on all our social media. Make sure to subscribe, hit the subscribe button, and we'll see you next time. Thank you, and have a great day.
Bye.